In the last class, we completed the introduction to Romantic period. Goji, tell me, what did you understand from the Romantic period? Literary background, important writers, important work of arts, historical background, all those 5 areas. Goji. Ghosh? Ghosh, am I audible?
Hello, sir. Audible, sir. Your voice is breaking. Please repeat, sir.
Is my voice breaking, Venkatesh sir, Danny ma'am?
No, sir, it's clear.
No, sir.
Sir, please repeat once again.
Goji, I
Hello.
was asking you, tell me about the romantic period. In the last class, we completed the romantic period. So I told you, whenever you read anything, you should remember the 5 areas of that particular period: the historical background, the political background, the literary features of that age, and then important literary figures, writers, and then important literary works. These are the 5 areas we have to always remember. So what you could remember from the romantic period? I told you last class that I would be troubling you, and you accepted to trouble you. So please go ahead.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Please.
Sir, I'm telling something about romantic period as far as my mind is concerned. Or as I know, romantic period actually which started after the publication of the Lyrical Ballad, that is in 1790. It was the joint venture of S.T. Coleridge, Samuel Taylor Coleridge, and William Wordsworth. So it was the beginning of the romantic era, which is also called as Return to Nature, and also called as Age of Wordsworth. And during this age, actually, as we know, during this age is actually influenced by the French Revolution, as the poets of this age, they believed in the liberty, fraternity, and equality. So they were influenced by the French Revolution, and during this age, actually, if we see the literary history or literary background of this age, actually. There was the theme of escapism, means the poets want to escape from this mundane world to the world of the others world, so that they can enjoy the merriment. And also, with the exception of that, they want to deep delve into the content of nature. Actually, they wanted to go in the deep into the nature. They wanted to portray the natural landscape through their poetry. And also this time, what they do, they emphasize the aesthetic beauty in their poetry. And also they idealize the woman characteristics in their poetry. And with the exception of that, especially Wordsworth and Coleridge, they actually romanticize the what should I say, the rural life they used to portray in their lives, in their poetry. And with the exception of that, they use simple language in their poetry. And if we talk about S.T. Coleridge, who was also opium eater, Archimedes, he also used to what should I say, he used to depict the supernatural phenomena in his poems, in his writings. Just if we see the Rime of the Ancient Mariner and also Christabel, where he has portrayed such kind of supernatural phenomena. And with the exception of that, feelings and emotions are also predominant in their poetry.
Right. Good, Goji. And prepare 3 questions to ask Venkateshulu, Danny, and Shailaja. You have to prepare 3 questions. That too tough questions. Goji.
Okay, sir. Okay, sir.
Right.
Okay, sir.
Venkateshul sir.
Yes, sir.
So tell me, who are the important writers of that age and their important work of arts or works of art?
Sir, important writers of the Romantic period is William Wordsworth and Samuel Taylor and S.T. Coleridge and Lord Bernard, Lucy. Yes, sir. I remember these 4 names only.
Are you traveling, Venkateshul sir?
No, sir. Yes, okay, sir.
Your voice is disturbing.
Sir, can I repeat now?
Yes, I
Sir,
can.
it is okay now?
Yes, now it's okay. Tell
Okay,
me, in this category, poets, novelists, then prose writers. Poets, novelists, prose writers. Likewise, you have to tell me.
Okay, sir. Sir, in Romantic period, there are few famous writers are there. Number 1 is William Wordsworth.
Venkateshwar
And
sir, my
yes,
question is simple. They are all considered to be writers, but who are the poets? Poets, poets
yeah,
group. Then there are prose writers group, and there are novelist group are there. So I want that
yeah.
way.
Uh, now I want to tell you this poetry group.
Yes, category wise. Tell me. Tell me.
Sir, I didn't try. Didn't. Sir, Shelley, John Keats. Uh, these are all poetry writers, prose writers. Charles Lamb, Thomas D. Quinney, William Haley Ezlith. I remember these three names.
So last
Prose
class,
writers.
when we are explaining in classroom, are you not preparing your own notes, Venkatesh sir?
Sir, I'm preparing, sir. Writing down, noting down.
So in the last class, because I told you in the previous class, I will be troubling you from hereafter. So what I asked you is, I want the names of the different writers, not in a haphazard way. I want the set of poets of Romantic period. I want set of prose writers in Romantic period, and I was set of novelists in Romantic period, because the questions come, who is not a poet in the Romantic period, and they will give you some other name. Jane Austen, is she a poet or a what do you call, poet or a essay writer or a novelist, Venkatesh sir?
He's poet, sir.
You revise, sir, you revise. I'll again
She's novelist, sir.
Shaljama?
I think she's novelist.
She's a novelist. She's a novelist, Venkatesh sir.
Okay, sir.
Again I'll revise, because this Romantic period is very important in examination point of view. Shakespeare is very important. That's why I took a lot of classes to complete Shakespeare. In the same way, Romantic period also, I have to take at least 3 to 4 classes to complete the entire Romantic period. But my intention is, if I complete the syllabus, but if you are not understood that syllabus in a proper way, and if you are not answering to the questions, then I have to revise. It may extend 1 or 2 days, 1 or 2 classes, but I have to revise, because the questions will come from this period. So in brief, I'll explain. Venkatesh sir, listen and please make a notes. Whenever we are attending classes, it is better to make a notes, at least scribble something on the paper, so that in the next class when I ask you, I'll definitely ask you. I will definitely trouble everybody in the classes, because from Jacobean age to the Restoration period, it's okay, those may not be covered in the syllabus, but these things are coming in the class exam. So I need to be strict, and I have to be I don't leave you. That's what I want to tell you. So let me revise. In Romantic period, there are major poets are there. The first one, who is the leader of the Romantic period or the Romantic poets, is William Wordsworth. And then we have Samuel Taylor Coleridge, and we have Lord Byron, Percy Bysshe Shelley, John Keats. So these are the 5 important poets in Romantic period: John Keats, Percy Bysshe Shelley, Lord Byron, Samuel Taylor Coleridge, and Wordsworth. Now, what are the important poems written by Wordsworth? First one is the Prelude. It is an autobiographical nature. The poet, the growth of poet's own mind. It is considered to be the magnum opus, the major work of art. And then we have Simon Lee, We Are Seven, lines written in early spring, expostulation and reply, the table stand, the thorn, lines composed a few miles above Tinton Abbey, and ode, Intimations of Immortality, ode to duty, the solitary reaper, right? And then we have Samuel Taylor Coleridge. He co-published Lyrical Ballads in 1798. That is the starting, or it is the beginning of the Romantic period. And his notable contribution to in Lyrical Ballad is Rime of the Ancient Mariner, and he had written the Biography Literaria. It is published in 1807, and he had written Kubla Khan, A Vision in Dream, a fragment, Zandu, the origin of Kubla Khan's capital, Zandu. Then we have Lord Byron. His full name is George Gordon Byron, and he had written Childe's Herald's Pilgrimage, Beppo, The Vision of Judgment, and Don Juan. Then we have fourth one, Percy Bysshe Shelley. He had written The Necessity of Atheism, a pamphlet, and because of that he was removed from the Oxford University. He had written Queen Mab, a philosophical poem, Ozymandias, Alastor, or the Spirit of Solitude, then Hymn to Intellectual Beauty, Revolt of Islam, Ode to West Wind, To Skylark, Prometheus Unborn, Adonis. It's a pastoral elegy written by Shelley to mourns or commemorates the death of Keats, and then he had written the Cenci, a tragedy in 5 acts, the Mask of Anarchy, and the Triumph of Life. Each and every bit of information which I displayed on the screen is very, very important examination point of view. Then we have one of the greatest romantic poets, John Keats. He died at the age of 26 because due to consumption, and he is known as Cockney School of Poetry. Along with him there were Law Hunt and Hazlitt, and he had written first poem Imitations of Spenser on first looking into the Chapman's Homer, Endymion, and he had written Ode to Autumn, Ode to Gracious Urn, Ode to Nightingale, and the Eve of State Angels. These are the important writers and their poems. Then we have major novelist. In that we have to remember Jane Austen. She is a novelist and she had written 6 famous novels and 1 novel was not published. And those names of those novels are Pride and Prejudice, Sense and Sensibility, Emma, Mansfield Park, Northanger Abbey, Persuasion. It's uncompleted because the Watson's father died. Sandition, she died. So Lady Susan is an epistoral novel, a juvenile novel. And then we have one more a novelist, Sir Walter Scott. He is known as, he is famous for writing historical novels. Heart of Middletonian and Bride of Lammermoor and Ivanhoe are the writings. And then we have Mary Shelley, who is known for her scientific fiction, and one of her novels is Frankenstein. And we have a Gothic novelist and his name is Horace Walpole. And the main important novel is Castle of Otranto. That means this Gothic novels is like a horror story related to the stories happens in the old remote castles. So these were the poets. Now we have major prose writers. One is Charles Lamb, second one is Thomas Dickensy, third one is William Hazlitt. Now these the contribution of these prose writers. Charles Lamb, he had written Tales from Shakespeare along with his sister, and he had written Essay of Elia. Lamb himself is the essay in the Elia, and then he had written the latest essays of India. And then we have Thomas Dickensy. He is also known as Confessions of an he had written Confessions of an English Opium Eater. It is related to autobiography. And then he had written On the Knocking at the Gate in Macbeth. And then he had written Reminiscence of English lake poets, the English Mail Coach. So these are the important writings of important prose writers. And then we have William Hazlitt. He had written Characters of Shakespeare Play, Book on Criticism, Round Table, and Table Talk. Both are collection of essays. So these are the people. There are 3 important prose writers: William Hazlitt, Thomas Dickensy, and Charles Lamb. And then we have novelists like Horace Walpole, Mary Shelley, Sir Walter Scott, Jane Austen, Fanny Burney, Alpha Ben. And then we have 5 important poets of Romantic period. They are John Keats, then Percy Bysshe Shelley, Lord Byron, Samuel Taylor Coleridge, and we have none other than William Wordsworth. And Venkateshwar sir, who is considered to be the pre-romantic poet? Venkateshwar sir. Who is known as pre-romantic poet? Venkateshwar sir.
Sir, you were asking is?
I am asking the name of the poet who is known as pre-romantic poet. These are all romantic poets, but there is one person who is known as pre-romantic poet.
Sir, ST Coleridge?
No sir, sorry, you are not revising what I am teaching in the classroom. It is William Blake. William Blake is known as pre-romantic poet. These are all very, very crucial and important information, because I have seen these type of questions in so many competitive examination with related to romantic period. So each and every sentence or each and every information which I am sharing with you is very important. So Venkatesh sir, please revise the topics which we have covered in the everyday classes, so that for the next class it will be easy for you to understand the topics. Will you do that, Venkatesh sir?
Definitely,
sir. And I will not leave anybody. I'll trouble everybody, because if I don't trouble you, you will never get what I mean to say is, if I don't trouble you at this stage, you will get troubles later stages. So let me trouble you, whatever it happens, whether you or unhappy, sad, or if you feel that this is not the right way or wrong way, all those things doesn't matter. I'll trouble you. Whenever I ask you to revise, you need to revise. You have to answer to my question. Then only I'll go to the next topic. Right. Shelja ma'am, am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Right. Now, you sent a message to me that you watched up to the last video, correct, Shelja ma'am?
Yeah.
Did you watch the last video about romantic period?
Yes, sir. Romantic age itself I watched, sir. Just with that I have started.
Right, fine. Whatever you could remember or whatever you have understood about romantic period, you please explain, Shelja ma'am.
Sir, I just remember that these are the important poets like William Wordsworth, H.P. Coleridge, and he have said that they have wrote from 1798. It is the beginning of the Romantic period, and it has started with the Lyrical Ballad, which is both of them have written. And I remember that all the female writers were novelists in that, and the entire Romantic age is about the feelings of the common people rather than the feelings of the officials. Like previously, it was very much based on the higher people, and in this particular Romantic period, it has been started with the feelings of the middle class people. And we have said that the industrial revolution has come, so with that middle class grew, and romantic it is also about the feelings of them, and it is also connected with the feelings of nature being given some importance. But only some parts I have remembered like that.
Okay, ma'am. Okay, fine. Goji,
Hi, sir.
are you ready with your questions?
Yes, sir. I am ready.
You ask first question to Venkatesh, sir.
Okay, sir. Wordsworth has written Lucy poems. He has written almost 5 Lucy poems. Can you tell any one out of those 5 Lucy poems?
Yes, sir.
First of all, who is Lucy, Venkatesh, sir?
Sir, Lucy poems.
Lucy. Who is Lucy?
The Prelude, an autobiographical poem. The Prelude, an autobiographical poem.
Goji,
Sir,
is it correct?
Goji, is it right? The Prelude, an autobiographical poem.
No. Sir is asking who is Lucy actually. What is the real identity of Lucy?
Lucy poem. Wordsworth had written Lucy poems, but who is that Lucy in that poem? That was my question, Venkatesh, sir.
No, sir, I don't know.
Right. Goji, tell me.
Sir, actually, as you discussed in the previous class about the identity of Lucy, you have specified only one thing, but I know, or even I seen in others materials also, Lucy's the identity of Lucy is too much controversial. Somewhere it is written that Lucy is the Mary Hutchinson, somewhere it is that Lucy is his lady love, somewhere it is told that Lucy is his own sister, and somewhere it is told Lucy is the nature itself. So it is full of controversial among the critics actually.
Right. But in examination point of view, if the question comes in the Lucy poems, who is Lucy, then what answer will you write?
Sir, it will be upon the options actually. What kind of options will be there? In accordance with the options, we have to choose the correct one.
So if the option is sister, then what will you do? Will you choose the sister or not?
Definitely, sir, sister then.
Because I also read, when I was teaching first batch, I also got confused. I referred to 2-3 different books. Then we concluded that Lucy poems, Lucy is sister of Wordsworth and her name is Dorothy Wordsworth. Because we should come to a conclusion, correct? If the question comes in examination, we cannot leave the question because it is in confusion. We should answer the question, we should find the marks. So Lucy poems is written by William Wordsworth, and who is Lucy? It is her sister, his sister, and her name is Dorothy Wordsworth. And what is your question, Goji? What are the Lucy poems, correct?
What are the Lucy poems?
Names of the Lucy poems. Tell me, Goji, what are the names of the Lucy poems?
Sir, she has written almost 5 Lucy poems, and those are strange bits of of passion have I known? I traveled among the unknown men. She dwelt among the untrodden ways. She as she grew in sun and shower and as slumbered in my spirit fell.
Right. Fine. Second question asked to Shelja ma'am. Goji.
Second question, ma'am. Actually, during this era, European war actually happened between two countries, and tell me the name of those two countries.
It has England and France, sir.
Sorry, madam.
England and France, sir. I remember it as England and France.
Yes. You are correct. England and France. It was at the end of the 18th century till 1815. You are correct.
Right. One more question you have correct, Goji?
Another questions to Venkatesh sir.
Ask Venkatesh sir.
Yes. Who are termed in the Romantic age? Who are termed as Cockney school of poetry? A little bit earlier, sir has discussed us. Who are termed as Cockney school of poetry? There are three major writers in this Romantic age. Who are termed?
There are John Keats, Perry Bysshe Shelley, Goji?
Venkatesh sir, Cockney School of Poetry. Cockney School of Poets. There are three people considered to be Cockney School of Poets. He is asking about the names of those three people.
No, sir, I don't remember. Cockney School of Poetry.
Just now I revised. Here you can see, at least Venkatesh says, look at the screen and tell me the names of the people who are regarded as Cockney School of Poets.
Keats, Lafont, and Hazlitt belong to Cockney School of Poetry.
Right. Leigh Hunt, John Keats, and William Hazlitt belongs to Cockney School of Poetry. Goji, correct?
Yes, sir. Correct, sir.
Right. Okay, right. Now let us start the class. And like this only, hereafter the classes will be there. You have to revise and you have to come to class. Otherwise, you will be feeling embarrassed in front of others or whatever it may be. You need to do this one. Right. So today, actually by mistake I told I'll start the poem Tintanabe, but actually I could prepare only one poem for today. That is Ode on Intimations of Immortality. So let us start the class without any disturbance. It is 6:30.
Sir, if you tell earlier which text will be discussed in that particular class, then we can see a little bit so that our understanding level.
Right. I got confused. I was not having a rest day, not even having proper sleep also these days. So my mind, I badly need 1 day rest. So that's why this week I am taking little break so that I can teach you without any kind of confusion with proper information. So let us begin the class, Goshi. Okay.
Yes,
right. Yes. So Wordsworth, his full name is Robert William Wordsworth. He's a Robert William Wordsworth Tennyson, poet laureate, 1843 and 1850. See, I'm just telling you, Robert Wordsworth, and there are three poet laureates. William Wordsworth, before it was Robert, and then after William Wordsworth it was Tennyson who became poet laureates. So Wordsworth is a poet laureate in between 1843 to 1850. And if we discuss life of Wordsworth, poets also important. Wordsworth's parents were John Wordsworth and a legal agent for James Lowth, first Earl of London.
Sir, what did you tell about the Tennyson and Wordsworth? Please once again repeat.
Robert Southey was the poet laureate. After Robert Southey, William Wordsworth became the poet laureate. After William Wordsworth, Tennyson became the poet laureate. Because in examination they will give you question, who preceded and who became the poet laureate after Wordsworth, or after whom William Wordsworth became the poet laureate. So these three are the interconnected. Robert Southey, after Robert, William Wordsworth became the poet laureate. After William Wordsworth, Tennyson became the poet laureate.
Okay, sir.
Right? And then Wordsworth's parents we are discussing. His father worked as legal agent for the James Lowth, first Earl of Lonsdale and a collector of customs at Whitehaven, and his wife Anne Cookson. John, at the age of 26, married Anne 18 in 1766. William's mother died when he was 7 years old and he became an orphan at the age of 13 years. Now you may feel strange whether you get these kind of questions. Yes, who is the romantic poet who became orphan at the age of 13 years? Then that is William Wordsworth. Then Wordsworth was born on 7th April 1710. They will ask you a question, which romantic poet was born on 7th April 1770? Then it is Wordsworth. So Wordsworth was born on 7th April 1770 in Cockermouth, the second of 5 children. Wordsworth's father, although rarely present, did teach him poetry, including that of Milton, Shakespeare and Spenser, in addition to allowing his son to rely on his father's library. Question may come, Wordsworth was well versed in whose poetry? And they will give you options Milton, Shakespeare and Spenser. So please identify. Wordsworth read the Milton's poetry and Shakespeare's poetry or novels, Shakespeare's literature and even Spenser. So then in March 1778, Anne died of an illness, possibly pneumonia at Perne. After the death of his mother in 1778, his father was inconsolable and sent his children away to be raised by their relatives. At Penrith, Wordsworth was sent to a school for the children of upper class families. Wordsworth was taught both the Bible and the Spectator, but little less. His discontent with his familial situation provoked Wordsworth to spend his time wandering away from his home, an action Wordsworth relates as uniting a childish imagination with both nature and mankind to the Prelude. So you can understand why Wordsworth was fond of nature and how the nature has become preacher and teacher to Wordsworth. When the situation, when the conditions were not favorable at home, he tries to get happiness, he tries to get solace in the nature. Besides the local surroundings, Wordsworth was educated at Hawkshead Grammar School. Remember Hawkshead Grammar School. Which romantic poet got educated in Hawkshead Grammar School is William Wordsworth, which had a reputation for scholarship and preparation for university entrance. Hawkshead School, remember the names, Hawkshead School had a strong relationship with St. John's College at Cambridge University, and in October 1787, Wordsworth became an undergraduate there. It was under Coleridge's support. So St. Coleridge became friend in this college. So it was under St. Coleridge's support that Wordsworth was encouraged to write poetry intended to rival Milton. Afterwards, Wordsworth continued to write even without the support of Coleridge Company, and from October 1798 to February 1799, Wordsworth began writing the Matthew poems along with the Lucy poems and other poems. These poems express the frustration and anxiety that Wordsworth was feeling. In particular, it is possible that the Lucy poems allowed Wordsworth to vent his frustration with his sister, and that they contain the subconsciousness desire for his sister to die. So Lucy poems are written by Wordsworth and as well as his sister Lucy. Now his way of writing is he makes ordinary to extraordinary. He, along with St. Coleridge, because this phrase will come, which is the romantic poet, or who is the romantic poet who writes from ordinary to extraordinary? It is William Wordsworth. And who writes from extraordinary to ordinary is John Keats. That means complex to simple is John Keats, simple to complex is Wordsworth. He, along with St. Coleridge, published Lyrical Ballads, a collection of poems. So Lyrical Ballads is a collection of poems in which St. Coleridge also contributed a book. And a collection of poems in 1798. The publication of Lyrical Ballads is in 1798, and that is the beginning of the Romantic Age. 1798 is the publication of Lyrical Ballads. 1789 is the French Revolution. So Lucy poems means it is about the Lucy, and she had written, and who is the Lucy? She is the sister of William Wordsworth and her name is Dorothy Wordsworth. Now let us briefly discuss the Prelude. So as I told you, the Prelude is a magnum opus or the major work by William Wordsworth, and the Prelude is an autobiographical poem, and the subtitle of the poem, the Prelude, is the growth of a poet's mind, and it is also known as poem to Coleridge. So Wordsworth growth or maturity, everything was found in this poem, or he had written this poem in such a style. Wordsworth magnum opus is generally considered to be the Prelude. So in examination, which book is considered as the magnum opus for Wordsworth? It is not Inter Abbey, it is not Ode to Intimation of Immortality, it is the Prelude. The Prelude is a semi-autobiographical poem of his early years that he revised and expanded a number of times. It was posthumously titled and published by his wife, So it was not published. It was not published when he was alive. It was published only after his death. So what is the poem which was published after Wordsworth's death? That is the Prelude, and it was published by his wife in the year of his death, before which it was generally known as the poem to Coleridge. So this is the introduction to the poem, the Prelude. Now I suppose somewhere I have skipped the one. Just give me some time. I'll come back to the Prelude. If it is any extra information is there, then I'll share you. Just give me 1 second. Prelude, we are discussing Prelude. Right, fine. So this is about the introduction to the Prelude. I am not discussing the entire poem, but I could somewhere I had stored information about how many poems were contributed by poet William Wordsworth and how many poems contributed by S.T. Coleridge. Somewhere it is. Wait a minute, just give me 1 minute. Somewhere I have stored that information. If we don't get proper rest, this is the problem. We got confused and we don't explain. Somewhere I have written how many poems are contributed by Wordsworth, how many poems contributed by yes, it is there. I'll just Prelude, that much only, I suppose. After Prelude, where is that Prelude? Then I have to go with Lyrical Ballad. Sorry. After Prelude, we have to discuss Lyrical Ballad. Did we discuss Lyrical Ballads, Goji?
No, sir, no.
Right. So here you can see on screen the information about the Lyrical Ballads. So what is this Lyrical Ballads? It is because of this only the Romantic period begin. So let us quickly discuss the Lyrical Ballads. So Lyrical Ballads written by both Wordsworth and as well as S.T. Coleridge, and it was published in the year 1798, and that is the beginning of the Romantic period. So what is this actual Lyrical Ballad? So in this Lyrical Ballads, Wordsworth contributed 19 poems and S.T. Coleridge contributed 4 poems. It has total 23 poems. In examination, they will ask you a question: how many poems Coleridge contributed to Lyrical Ballads? So it is 4 poems. If they ask you a question, how many poems Wordsworth contributed to Lyrical Ballads, then it is 19 poems. How many poems are there in total in Lyrical Ballad? Then it is 23 poems. And if the question comes, who had written published Lyrical Ballad, then it is both S.T. Coleridge and William Wordsworth. The year 1793 saw the first publication of poems by William Wordsworth in the collections An Evening Walk and Descriptive Sketches. In 1795, he received a legacy of £900 from Raisley Calvert and became able to pursue a career as a poet. So he left everything, and when he inherited this much money, he became full-time poet. Together, Wordsworth and Coleridge, with insights from Dorothy, produced Lyrical Ballads in 1798, an important work in the English Romantic movement. The volume gave neither Wordsworth nor Coleridge's name as author. One of the Wordsworth's most famous poems, Tintern Abbey, was published in this collection. In exam, they will ask you which poem was published in Lyrical Ballads by William Wordsworth. Then it is Tintern Abbey. And very famous poem of S.T. Coleridge published along with Lyrical Ballads or along with the Tintern Abbey is The Rime of the Ancient Mariner. The second edition published in 1800. So the question may come, when is the second edition of the Lyrical Ballads published? It is in the year 1800 and had only Wordsworth listed as the author, and included a preface to the poems. It was augmented significantly in the next edition published in 1802. So there are three publications, I suppose. First one is in 1798 and second publication is 1800, where the Wordsworth is mentioned as the poet or writer, and in the third publication is 1802. So total number of poems included in this lyrical ballads are 23 poems. 19 poems are the contribution by Wordsworth and 4 poems are the contribution by Coleridge. And a very famous poem in the lyrical ballads is Tintern Abbey, and from the S.T. Coleridge it is the Rime of the Ancient Mariner. Then we are going now to discuss Intimations of Immortality from Recollection of Early Childhood. So if you can see this poem, it is beginning lines. They will give you these lines and they will ask you from which poem these lines have been taken. So the first 3 lines, introduction to this poem: the child is father of the man, and I could wish my days to be bound each to each by natural piety. So with these lines, the poem Ode Intimations of Immortality from Recollections of Early Childhood begins. The child is the father of the man, and I could wish my days to be bound each to each by natural piety. Now let us go back and try to understand the introduction to the poem or the background of the poem Intimations of Immortality from Recollections of Early Childhood, and it is also known as Ode. Remember, it is also known as Ode, and it is also known as Immortality Ode, or it is also known as Great Ode. So Ode Intimations of Immortality from Recollections of Early Childhood is also known as Ode, or it is also known as Immortality Ode or the Great Ode. It was completed in 1804 and published in poems in 2 volumes in 1807. The poem was completed in 2 parts with 4 stanzas written among a series of poems composed in 1802 about childhood. So the first part of the poem was completed on 27th March 1802, and a copy was provided to Wordsworth friend and fellow poet Samuel Taylor Coleridge. So the first part, first 4 stanzas of the poem was completed by William Wordsworth by 27th March 1802, but he could not complete the remaining parts of the poem. And when it was shown to Samuel Taylor Coleridge, S.T. Coleridge, who responded with his own poem Dejection and Ode. So which poem is a response to William Wordsworth Ode Intimations of Immortality is S.T. Coleridge's poem Dejection and Ode in April. The 4th stanza of the ode ends with a question. So this 4th stanza of this poem Ode Intimations of Immortality ends with a question, and Wordsworth was finally able to answer it with 7 additional stanzas. So after 4 stanzas, he had written 7 additional stanzas and completed in early 1804. So the first part, first 4 stanzas completed in 1802, and the second part of the poem was completed in 1804. So Shakespeare took 2 years time to complete this entire poem, and it was printed as ode in 1807, and it was not until 1815 that it was edited and revoked to the version that is currently known. So Ode Intimations of Immortality took these many years for Wordsworth to complete. The first 4 stanzas completed by 27th March 1802, and he took 2 more years, correct? 2 more years to complete the remaining part, because the 4th stanza ends with a question, and he found the answer only after 2 years, and then he could complete this poem. And finally it was published, printed in 1807, but finally it was published in a full-fledged version in 1850 with the name Ode Intimations of Immortality. Now what is this poem Intimations of Immortality? Whatever we have lost during childhood, the poet wants to regain that, and he wants to relive that kind of life. The poem is an irregular Pindaric ode in 11 stanzas. In exam they will ask you, ode or intimation or immortality has how many stanzas? The answer is 11 stanzas. The lengths of the lines and of the stanzas vary throughout the text, and the poem begins with an iambic pentameter. And now this poem has 3 movements. First 4 stanzas. Goji, am I clearly audible?
Clearly audible.
Alright.
Clearly.
So this poem has total 4 plus 7 stanzas. So total how many stanzas it has? 11 stanzas it has. Now out of those 11 stanzas, The first movement is 4 stanzas long and discusses the narrator's inability to see the divine glory of nature, the problem of the poem. So the first 4 stanzas in this poem are considered as the crisis in the life of the poet. The poet failed to see the divine glory of nature. He believed that the nature will give him everything. The nature is the preacher and the teacher, and he will relive life with the help of the nature. But in the beginning of this poem, he failed to see the divine glory. That means he is a pantheist. If I remember properly, if my state of mind is clean, he is a pantheist. He worshipped the nature as God, but he failed to find that kind of divinity in the nature. So he was desperate in search to find such kind of divinity in the nature, and when he failed to find that, he expressed his anger, he expressed his dismay, he expressed his suffering in the first 4 stanzas of the poem. So that's why the first 4 stanzas are grouped under the title crisis. In exam they will ask you crisis, explanation, consolation, all this will be there, and they will ask you which one is the first part of the poem. So that is the crisis is the first part of the poem, and it contains first 4 stanzas. Then the second movement is 4 stanzas long and has a negative response to the problem. So first 4 stanzas over in the crisis, and the next 4 stanzas over in the causes of crisis. So now in the second part of the poem, William Wordsworth explains what are the reasons, or what would be the likely reasons for losing that kind of a divine glory of nature, and why he has lost in touch with that divinity which is found in the nature. The second movement is 4 stanzas long and has a negative response to the problem. Now come to the third movement is the 3 stanzas. So last one is 3 stanzas. Last part is 3 stanzas. First part is 4 stanzas. Second part is 4 stanzas, and the last part is 3 stanzas. The third movement is 3 stanzas long and contains a positive response to the problem. So the problem is when William Wordsworth failed to see the glory, divinity, happiness in the nature, the next 4 stanzas expressed about the negativity, whereas the last 3 stanzas it contains the positive response to the problem. So he found the solution to the problem. That is the reason why he could complete this poem, and for him it took 2 long years. The ode begins by contrasting the narrator's view of the world as a child and as a man, with what was once a life interconnected to the divine fading away. So the poem, before we start the poem introduction, all those things, it is very, very easy to understand if you know what actually William Wordsworth is trying to say. When we were children, we were very happy, but as we grow into adults, we have lost that happiness. Now William Wordsworth wanted to find or go back into that same state of mind or same kind of happiness life where he could relive his childhood. So he used to tell, or he wanted to tell, that the child's life or the child's perspective, or when he was a child, his life was so happy. So this entire poem talks about the loss of that kind of a divinity found in the nature. When William Wordsworth failed to found, then it is become his problem, and finally he understood how to get back to that kind of state of life or state of mind, and that is the source of consolation. So this entire poem is divided into 3 movements. One is the crisis, first 4 stanzas, and second 4 stanzas discuss the cause of crisis and its explanation about the problem, and the third 3 stanzas or third movement describe the source of consolation. How could poet William Wordsworth console him, and what was the solution given by the William Wordsworth, the people who suffer from the same kind of problem. Okay. Now this is the poem. I tried to share the poem, but I didn't get that enough time to copy and paste. So we'll just read the poem once, and then I have pasted stanza wise explanation. I'll complete the stanza wise explanation also. So now first, Goshi, can you please start reading this poem?
Yes, sir. Am I audible, sir?
Rani, just go.
Am I audible, sir?
Yes, you are audible. Just I'll bring my water bottle. Just 1 minute. Rani? Neely, Rani. Goji, please.
Yes, sir. The child is the father of the man, and I could wish my days to be bound each to each by natural pity. There was a time when meadow, grove, and stream, the earth, and every common sight to me I seem. Apparelled in celestial light, the glory and the freshness of a dream, it is not now as it had been of yore. Turn whosoever I may, by night or day, the things which I have been, I now can see no more.
Right. Now, what is this explanation? Let us see quickly. In the first stanza, the speaker says wistfully that there was a time when all of the nature seemed dreamlike to him, apparelled in celestial light, and that the time is past. The things I have seen, I can see no more. So he used to see something during his childhood which now he had forgotten, or he was not having that kind of a visions. So let me just go back. There was a time when he was child. There was a time means during his childhood. There was a time when meadow, grove, and stream, the earth and every common sight, to me did seem apparelled in celestial light. So all these meadows, grove, stream, earth, every beautiful and natural thing in the nature, he found those things in celestial light, like a divine light. It gives him inspiration, it gives him sorts of happiness, the glory and the freshness of a dream. It is not now as it hath been of old. Now when he become adult, he has lost that inspiration from the nature. Turn whosoever I may, by night or day, the things which I have seen now I now can see no more. So there is no inspiration, there is no happiness for him in this life, because he has lost that kind of a divine touch in the nature. Now, second stanza. Goji, please.
Yes, sir, yes, sir. The rainbow come and goes, and lovely is the rose. The moon doth with delight look round her when the heavens are bare. Waters on a starry night are beautiful and fair. The sunshine is beauteous but yet I know whenever I go that there hath passed away a glory from the earth.
Right. So now in the second stanza, he says that he still sees the rainbow and that rose is still lovely. The moon looks around the sky with delight, and starlight and sunshine are each beautiful. Nonetheless, the speaker feels that a glory has passed away from the earth. He has not found any kind of happiness even though you look at them. See, I don't want to elaborate or explain, but one thing I'll tell you, when we were children, when we see small things, when we see a river, when we see water, when we see monkeys, when we see things in the nature, we used to get a lot of excitement, we used to enjoy, we used to jump with joy and dance. But now when you look at the same things, you don't find any kind of excitement. The reason is because we have grown adults, we have lost in touch with those things, or because we have become adults, we have moved away from the glory and the divinity which is present in the nature. That is the problem even Wordsworth is also facing in his life. So that is the reason why it is the crisis stage in the life of the poet. I suppose again I have stated. Now we have to go with the third stanza. Correct, Goji? Ghosh, am I right?
Yes, sir, yes, sir.
Right. No, I'll copy and paste. Please read the third stanza, Goshi.
Yes, sir. Now, while the birds that sing a joyous song, and while the young lambs bound as to the tabor sound, to me alone there came a thought of grief. A timely utterance gave that thought relief. And I again am strong. The cataracts below their trumpets from the steep. No more shall grief of mine the seasons wrong. I hear the echoes to the mountains strong. The winds come to me from the fields of sleep, and all the earth is gay. Land and sea give themselves up to jollity, and with the heart of May doth every day keep holiday. Thou child of joy, shout round me, let me hear thy shouts, thou happy shepherd boy.
Right. Now we are discussing third stanza. Let me copy and paste the summary of the third stanza so that it would be easy for me also to explain. Let us go back. Where am I? Now in the third stanza, which Ghoshji read, what Wordsworth is trying, still it is in the part of crisis only, so we can understand he was not able to find that kind of divinity in those natural objects. So in the third stanza, the speaker says that while listening to the birds sing in springtime and watching the young lambs leap and play, he was stricken with a thought of grief. He became very sad when he watched the songs, listened to the songs of birds, and when he watched the young lambs playing, he was stricken with grief, sadness. But the sound of nearby waterfalls, the echoes of the mountains, and the gusting of winds restored him to strength. He declares that his grief will no longer wrong the joy of the season and that all earth is happy. He understood that the sadness is not in the nature, it is somewhere in his mind or in his life. He exhorts a shepherd boy to shout and play around him. Now let us go to the third stanza. Where am I? Right here. I'll copy and paste, give me a minute. Fourth stanza we have to discuss. Goji, are you ready?
Yes, sir.
Right. Please, Goji, please read this fourth stanza.
Yes, sir. Ye blessed creatures, I have heard the call, ye to each other make I see, the heavens up with you in your jubilee. My heart is at your festival, my head hath its coronal, the fullness of your bliss I feel it all. O evil day, if I was silent while earth herself is adorning this sweet May morning, and the children are calling on every side. In 1,000 valleys far and wide, fresh flowers while the sun shines warm, and the baby leaps up on his mother's arm. I hear, with joy I hear. But there is a tree of many one, a single field which I have looked upon. Both of them speak of something that is gone. The fancy at my feet doth the same till repent. Winter is played the visionary gleam. Where is it now, the glory and the dream?
Right. Now last two lines are very important. They will give you these two lines. They will ask you from which poem these lines were. And these lines are the end for the first part of the poem, that is the crisis in the life of the poet. Now what is the fourth stanza explains here is, where am I? In the fourth stanza here, he addresses nature's creatures and says that his heart participates in their joyful festival. When he see the happiness in the nature and the creatures enjoying in the nature, he was also felt happy. His heart participates in their joyful festival. He says that it would be wrong to feel sad on such a beautiful May morning while children play and laugh among the flowers. Nevertheless, a tree and a field that he looks upon make him think of something that is gone, and a pansy at his feet does the same. He asks what happened to the visionary gleam, where is it now, and the glory and the dream. So he wanted to look back, or he wanted to get back that visionary gleam. He used to, according to William Wordsworth's life story, William Wordsworth is getting inspiration from the nature, and he has some kind of a visions, like means whenever he look at the nature, whenever he's become the part of the nature, he could produce the greatest poetry. But at this stage, what happened, he was not able to produce that much great poetry. So he was finding, or he was trying to get inspiration. And this is the crisis in the life of the William Wordsworth. So the first four stanzas comes under the part or the movement called the crisis. Now in the next part of the poem, we are going to know about the negative responses to the problem and the positive responses to the problem. The problem says at the end of the fourth stanza is, whither is the field of the visionary gleam, where is it now, the glory and the dream. So he wanted to find out where he lost and why he lost, when did he lose this visionary gleam in his life. William Wordsworth is also known as like a prophetic poet. Now let us go to the fifth stanza. And very famous lines comes from the fifth stanza. Where am I? Right. Our birth is but a sleep. Those who have read, if you have understood these lines, these are like life-changing lines. I'll read. Our birth is but a sleep and a forgetting. The soul that rises with us, our life star, hath had elsewhere its setting. He says that we all have come from a different world. Our source of life is not on the planet Earth, and the life on the planet Earth is just like a sleep and forgetting. We are not able to understand what is our life on this planet Earth. We have come from a distant place and we are just here spending some time. Like when you are sleeping, if you get a dream, you feel that in the dream that the dream is real. But once you wake up from the dream, you know that the dream is not reality. So in the such state of life we are leading or living on the planet Earth. So he says that our birth is but a sleep and a forgetting. The soul that rises with us, our life star, hath had elsewhere his setting. Our soul comes from different place, not from the planet Earth, and came from afar, not in entire forgetfulness and not in utter nakedness, but trailing clouds of glory do we come from God. So he says that we all have come from the God, Christian belief, who is our home. So he says that God is the home or origin of everybody's life. Heaven lies about us in our infancy. Shades of the prison house begin to close upon the growing boy, but he beholds the light, and whence it flows, he sees it in his joy. The youth who daily farther from the east must travel still is nature's priest, and by the vision splendid is on his way attent. At length the man perceives it die away and fade into the light of common day. So as a child we all understood, or we all realized, or we were very close to our origin of life. He says that we were all come from God and we were very close or very near to the God. That's why we were all happy. And now we have lost touch with God and we have forgotten our origin. That is the reason why we are all facing these many problems. Let us go with the summary of the stanza 5 onwards. Goji, can you please read the summary?
Yes, sir, I'm reading the summary. In the fifth stanza, he proclaims that human life is merely a sleep and a forgetting, that human beings dwell in a purer, more glorious realm before they enter the earth, heaven. He says, lies about us in our infancy. As children, we still retain some memory of that place, which causes our experience of the earth to be suffused with its magic. But as the baby passes through boyhood and young adulthood and into manhood, he sees that magic die.
Right.
In the sixth stanza,
We'll study 6.
Yes.
So it is a simple belief. Even most of the Indians, we have that during our childhood, during our infancy or infanthood, we were very close to God and we can connect and communicate with the God. But as we grow older and older, we have distanced from our source. What is the source? It is the God. So that is the reason why all these problems comes when we grow and we lose our source of main source. Now let us go to the 6th stanza. Here after the stanza is very simple. Venkatesh sir, am I audible? Venkatesh sir.
Yes, sir. It's audible.
Right. I'll share the 6th stanza. Please read the 6th stanza, sir. Venkatesh sir, please read the 6th stanza.
Earth fills her lap with pleasure of her own. Yearning she hath in her own natural kind, and even with something of a mother's mind, and no unworthy aim. The homely nurse doth all she can to make her foster child her inmate man forget the glories he hath known, and the imperial place whence he came.
Right. So he says that as a child we were aware about our source, we were aware about God, we were very much connected with our source. But as we grow old, we have lost connection, and these worldly attractions captivate and captures our mind, and that will make us to forget about our origin. So now in the 6th stanza, the speaker says that the pleasures unique to earth conspire to help the man forget the glories whence he came. So he believes that we all have come from heaven, but now in this place, though it is hell, we feel that this is heaven or this is the happiest place, because the worldly pleasures made us to believe that this is the best part of life, or these are the best happiness, and that made us to forget about the glories from where are the happiest things which were available from in our source. The source is God or it is heaven. So I can give you lots and lots of examples. In the last class it was like a elaborate discussion. Again I am telling in every class we are not going to go with that kind of elaborate discussion. We'll go to the point so that we can complete that syllabus within time period. But still see, most of us, when we find good comforts in this planet, with wealth, with social prestige and all those things, we feel very sad if to lose those worldly, earthly pleasures and earthly materialistic things. But he says that, the poet says that these are all actually conspiracies of the people around us, are that what you call the materialistic attractions, but actually the place from where we have come to this planet or in this life, that is actually heaven. There lies their original happiness. But when we got attracted to these worldly pleasures, we forget about our glorious past. That's what he was trying to explain to the people in this stanza. Which stanza did we complete? Sixth stanza we completed, correct, Goji?
Yes, sir, 600.
Right.
7th stanza will be there.
Now we will go with the 7th stanza. We'll complete this poem, then only I'll leave the class. Of course, I am also feeling very exhausted, but it's okay. Let us complete. Is it visible, Goji?
Yes, visible, sir.
Please read, Goji.
Yes, sir.
Now, one second. I just forgotten. First 4 stanzas are the first crisis, correct? And the next 4 stanzas are the negative solution to the problem, correct? So next 4 means how many stanzas will come? First 4, and then next 4 means 4, 5th, 6th, 7th and 8th, correct?
Yes, sir.
Alright, read.
Behold, child among his newborn blisses, a 6 years darling of a pygmy size. See where mid work of his own hand he lies, fretted by cells of his mother's kisses, with light upon him from his father's eyes. See at his feet some little plan or chart, some fragment from his dream of human life, shaped by himself with newly learned art, a wedding or a festival, a mourning or a funeral, and this hath now his heart, and unto this he frames his song, then will he fit his tongue. To dialogues of business, love, or strife, but it will not be long, ere this be thrown aside, and with new joy and fright the little actor comes another part, feeling from time to time his humorous page, with all the persons down to welfare age that life brings with her in her equipage, as if his whole vocations were endless imitation.
So he says that the people who get caught in this earthly pleasures, it is difficult for them to come out of that. Let me copy the summary and let us read the summary and let us complete this one. Now here if you see, in the 7th stanza, the speaker beholds a 6 years old boy and imagines his life. Now he takes an example of a 6 years old boy and he explains this concept. And the love his mother and father feel for him, he sees the boy playing with some imitated fragment of adult life, some little plan or chart imitating a wedding or a festival or a mourning of the funeral. The speaker imagines that all human life is a similar imitation. So we don't know what actually we are doing. Like you and me, we are not knowing what we are doing. We are just imitating what our parents imitated their parents and their parents. So we all don't know what is actually the truth. We all don't know what is this. So we were all actors in this play and imitating what our parents told us to follow. So that is what is explained in the stanza 7. He couldn't find the answer to his problem. Where has he lost his divine glory? So still we have to continue with the next stanza, and then only we'll come to the solution to this crisis. So I'll copy now 8th stanza here. Am I audible, Shailja ma'am? Shailja ma'am, am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Right. Now you will read the 8th stanza, but let me paste it first properly here. So this is the last stanza where The negativity ends.
Shall I read, sir?
One second, I'm trying to copy the second page also. Is it clearly visible, Shailja ma'am?
Yes, sir.
Please read.
Thou whose exterior semblance doth believe, thou soul's immensity, thou best philosopher, who yet dost keep thy heritage, thou eye among the blind, that deaf and silent reads the external deep, haunted ever by the eternal mind, mighty prophet, seer blessed, on whom these truths do rest, which we are toiling all our life to find, in darkness lost, the darkness of grave, thou over whom thy immortality broods like the day, a master or a slave, a presence which is not to be put by. Should I read which is in the bracket, sir?
To whom the grave is but a lonely bed
Yeah.
without the sense or sight of a day or the warm light, a place of thought
A
where we
place,
in waiting lie. Though
thou
little child,
Thou little child, yet glorious in the might of heaven, born freedom on the thy being's height, why with such earnest pains dost thou provoke the years to bring the inevitable yoke? Thus blindly with thy blessedness at strife, full soon thy soul shall have her earthly fright, and custom lie upon thee with a weight heavy as frost and deep almost as life.
right. Here, before I give you this explanation of this stanza, he calls the boy a child, mighty prophet and seer blessed, on whom these truths do rest. So he believes that the child know all these things. Only adults fail to understand this truth. Now let us go back and find out that in the 8th stanza, the speaker addresses the child as though he were a mighty prophet of a lost truth, and rhetorically ask him why, when he has access to the glories of his origins and to the pure experience of nature, he still hurries towards an adult life of custom and earthly fright. So he asked that young boy that you know the truth and you know how we were all connected from the source, and why couldn't I realize that at this stage? Then we'll go to the next stanza. So first four stanzas explain the crisis in the life of the poet, and then next four stanzas discuss the source of the crisis and the problem and the reasons, and then it was in a negative way he explained in the next set of the poem stanzas. First four poems are the crisis, second set of the four poems are crisis. Now in the last stage or in the last part of the poem, he will give the answer to his problems, and these are little lengthy stanzas. Let me just copy and paste it properly. Is it visible, Goji?
Yes, sir, visible, sir.
Let me just zoom it, because any line they can give you from this poem and they will ask you from which poem these lines are extracted. Just give me a minute. Which endeavor. Now he is going to discuss that last movement of the poem. Goji, please read.
Yes, sir. O joy, that in our embers is something that doth alive, that nature yet remembers what was so fugitive. The thought of our past years in me doth wait, perpetual benedictions not included, for that which is most worthy to be blessed, delight and levity, the simple creed of childhood, whether busy or at rest, with new pledged hope still fluttering in his breast. Not for this I raise a song of thanks and praise, but for those obstinate questionings of sense and outward things, fallings from us, vanishings, black misgivings of a creature moving about in the worlds not realized, how a high instincts before which our mortal nature did tremble like a guilty thing surprised, but for those past affections, those shadow recollections which be they what they may, are yet the fountain light of all our day, and yet a master light of all our seeing, afford us cherish and have power to make our noisy ears seem moments in the being of eternal silence, truth that wake to perish never, which neither listlessness nor mad endeavor, nor man nor boy, nor all that is at enmity with joy, can utterly abolish or destroy. Hence, in a seasons of calm weather, though inland far we be, our souls have sight of that immortal sea which brought us hither, can in a moment brave thither, and see the children's foot upon the shore, and hear the mighty waters rolling everywhere.
Right. So this is the eighth stanza. So in eighth stanza, ninth stanza. So from ninth, 10th and 11th, these three stanzas, he get the consolation. Consolation means he gets some kind of relief from his problem or from his agony. So let me just copy and then let me also explain this poem. Right. So if we discuss the ninth stanza, in the ninth stanza, the speaker experiences a surge of joy. Earlier he was very sad. In the last 8 stanzas, he were very sad. In the ninth stanza, speaker experiences a surge of joy at the thought that his memories of childhood will always grant him a kind of access to that lost world of instinct, innocence and exploration. That means he says that, okay, even though I have grown adult, but still the memories of my childhood will help me to go back into that world which is very close to the God, the world from where I have come from, the heaven, and that innocence and the exploration. So he was feeling happy when he realized that though he cannot go back into the past to experience the same life which he had experienced during childhood, but still those memories will help him to relive the life. So that's why in the last 3 stanzas we are going to find the solution to the poet's crisis. Now we are going to what happened. Now we are going to the 10th stanza. Let us see what is actually given in the 10th stanza. Venkatesh sir, are you there? Venkatesh sir.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I'm here.
Yes, sir. Please read the 10th stanza. One second. We'll try to copy the 2 stanzas so that you can read and I can also explain without confusion. So this is 11th stanza. There is last lines of the 11th stanza. How the poem ends also we have to remember. Venkatesh sir?
Yes, sir.
So last 2 stanzas. Please read the 10th stanza first.
Yeah. Then sing, a birds sing a joyous song, and let the young lambs bow. As to the labor's sound, we in thought will join your throng. A that pipe and a that play, a that throw your heart today. Feel the gladness of the May. What though the radiance which was once so bright be now forever taken from my sight? Though nothing can bring back the hour of splendor in the grass, of glory in the flower, will grieve not, rather find strength in what remains behind. In the primal sympathy, what having been must ever be, in the soothing shores that spring out of human suffering, in the faith that looks through death, in years that bring the philosophic mind.
Please continue 11th stanza also.
And oh, fountains, meadows, hills, and groves, forbid not any serving of our laws. Yet in my heart of hearts I feel your might. I only have relinquished one delight, to live beneath your more habitual sway. I love the brooks which down their channels fret, even more than when I drip lightly as they. The innocent brightness of a newborn day is lovely yet. The clouds that gather round the setting sun do take a sober coloring from an eye that have kept when kept watch over man's morality
Mortality.
and mortality Another race hath been, and other plums were won.
Thanks to the human
Thanks
heart
to
by
the
which we live, thanks to its tenderness, its joy and fears, to me the meanest flower that blows can give thoughts that do often lie too deep for tears. So with these lines, poet ends the second or third part of the movement where he finds the solution and happiness to his problem. So let us go with the explanation part. In the 10th stanza, blustered by this joy, so he found some kind of relief by understanding that through his memories of his childhood, he can travel back into that old world and he could live happily, and that made him to become very happy. He urges the birds to sing and urges all creatures to participate in the gladness of the May. May is the month. He says that though he has lost some part of the glory of nature and experience, he will take solace in primal sympathy, in memory. That means in his memory he can travel back and he can rejoice and he can relive the childhood. And in the fact that the years bring a mature consciousness, a philosophic mind. So he developed a philosophical mind. As a child he was happy. Now with this help of philosophical mind, he can remain happy in his life. So that is one of the ways he made himself happy and consoled himself. In the final stanza, the speaker says that this mind, so now it is mind, not the body, it is the mind in which stems from a consciousness of morality as opposed to the child's feeling of immortality, enables him to love nature and natural beauty all the more, for each of nature's object can stir him to thought, and even the simplest flower blowing in the wind can rise in him thoughts that do often lie too deep for tears. So the main problem with Wordsworth was he has lost inspiration to write poetry. He has lost inspiration from the nature. So now he realized that he could get the inspiration and he could relive his life and rejoice his life with that philosophical mind. Though he becoming old or he is adult, but still he can find the same sense of happiness through his state of mind, and now he has achieved the philosophic mind. So in this poem, this is the end of the poem of Ode and Intimations of Immortality. Poet wants to find the answer to his problem, and that happened in the three stages. The first three movements, the first movement is the four stanzas, and that is a crisis, and the next movement is found in the four stanzas, that is the causes of the crisis. How could he lose the divine glory in his nature or life? And the third part is in source of consolation, when he realized that through his memories of childhood he can relive and he can travel back and he can enjoy his life, that brought solace and happiness in the life of poet. So now he could get inspiration from the nature and the natural objects, and he feels very happy. So the ode begins by contrasting the narrator's view of the world as a child and as a man with what one's life interconnected with the divine fading away. So poets develop the prophetic mind, and with that mind he will live hereafter happily. So that is the end of the poem, or the summary of the poem Ode on Intimations of Immortality, written by William Wordsworth. So this is from my side. If you have any questions, you can please ask me.